Hey y'all, welcome back to Dots and Beyond. My name is Beth, and today we are doing an update of my reading journal. So, as most of you know, if you've been watching for a little while, I have been struggling with my day job being very, very demanding. I am an event manager, and things got very crazy after the pandemic. So, when I set this up, I knew my goals might be lofty. I didn't realize how lofty they were with the hours that I was working. That has now been rectified. I have changed jobs. But we'll look at a couple of months in here where I really did not do much of anything and talk about those and work-life balance. So here is the beginning. Obviously, I set my journal up with the Lord of the Rings theme, so I do have a sticker here. This is an Archer and Olive journal. If you want to pick this up, my discount code is down in the description box below. It's DMB10. This is a traveler size journal, and I've decided I really love having my reading journal in this size. It just works perfectly for me. So here was my setup. I am using an index to log where the books are, what page that they land on, those that I have read. Here were my goals, 32 in 2022. Again, a little bit lofty for me with the job that I had going into 2022. Now, it is not lofty for me in what my actual habits as a reader used to be before work got out of control. My mother was a librarian. I grew up with books. I was reading all of the time. So it has taken a while for me to build this habit back up. I've had to be very, very intentional about making time for reading. So I've been doing that very slowly as I've been coming out of my burnout and getting back into a good work-life balance. So reduce my backlog by 10. This is falling victim to my mood reading. I'm very much a mood reader and don't necessarily want to pick up the books that are in my backlog, but there you go. So 2 memoirs, I have actually completed this, and we will look at those as I get to them. Journal all my reads, I'm doing a good job so far. There's some that I still need to go back and fill in my thoughts. My Lord of the Rings reread, I'm about 2/3 the way through. I have finished Fellowship of the Ring and the Two Towers, and I'm actually ahead on that. So here is my book count reading. I think I may need to fill in 1 or 2 more of those. This is my release radar for books that are coming up. My TBR and recommendations from y'all, from BookTube, from friends, all live here. This is my backlist bingo, and right now the only books I have filled in is Archive of the Forgotten. So again, this is my backlist. These are books that live on my shelves that have been there for quite some time, and I just haven't picked it up yet. Or I started it and I started at a bad time. So In the Name of the Wind and The Blade Itself, both of these, I probably read 5 to 10 chapters at some point, and I need to go back and actually finish these 2 iconic fantasy series and get going on those. Here is my series tracker. Like I said, I haven't touched any of my series with the exception of The Invisible Library. I am working on one of those books right now. I did not intend to haul a lot of books, maybe more on Audible than anything, but from May to June, which is the time frame of which I have a new job and time to read, I've picked up a whole lot of books, be it from Book of the Month Club or from the actual bookstore or from Audible. So yeah, I'm getting into the book buying habit without actually getting them read. So we'll see if I can ever get those balanced. This was my first line of the book spread. So of the books I've read, this is the first line from each book. I left myself plenty of room for that. So this was January in Hobbiton. And again, I started off pretty strong in January. My workload was difficult but not unmanageable in my day job. And so I did get the 2 books that I intended to read that month read. And that was The Archive of the Forgotten and Dave Grohl's The Storyteller. And how I am journaling my books is putting in a copy of the cover, a little bit of information about the book, how I read it, quotes on the left side, and my thoughts on the right side. And I actually finished this just shortly before Taylor of the Foo Fighters died. And that was really, really difficult because in this book, The Storyteller, you find out how much Dave Grohl and Taylor really were not just bandmates, but they were brothers. And so, mourning that loss just can't imagine what he was going through, especially after Kurt as well. Moving into February, and things started to get a little sporadic because of my day job and the number of events that I was running. I did finish God of Lost Worlds. I started on the Night Circus, and I know everybody loves the Night Circus. I'm struggling with this book, and I don't know if it was the timing, so I have shelved it. I've not DNF'd it because I think it's the timing, and I think I'm going to need to come back to that. And as we've been going along, my Lord of the Rings tracker and my plan to read, so many books of Lord of the Rings in a certain amount of time and the chapters, I did come back and finish this in May. I didn't actually read this in February. Here is God of Lost Worlds. Moving into March, and here I have no time to read. So as an event manager in the city that I live in, the end of February, March, and April are what I call the gala months. And that was my specialty as an event manager in venues, was to the big fundraisers, the galas, the balls, all of that sort of thing. And there was a weekend at the beginning of April where I literally had 2 banquets on one night, 2 galas on the next night, an Indian wedding the following night. And it was just extraordinarily overwhelming for the end of February, March, and the beginning of April. And then the last week of April, I actually did make the decision for work-life balance to change jobs. So I don't have a lot in here for March. And so I had left pages. And so I wrote in a prompt to just say, how does not reading make me feel? And I filled that in. And I had a different prompt for April. I haven't quite finished that yet. Here was my April setup with Rivendell. I still had hope that I was going to read, and then it just never really happened. So I was reading Fellowship. This is the moment that I was liberated from my 90-hour work weeks. And so I just had a little blurb in here for April. I did leave a prompt, what lives have I lived as a reader, and I do want to come back and fill that in. So May, I started having time to read again. I eased into it. Like I said, I've been dealing with a lot of burnout. I did go back to tracking the days that I read. My Lord of the Rings tracker for The Two Towers, book 3, and then just some thoughts. See, I still have the Night Circus on hold. I did also read the bullet journal method again, mainly for my work journal. Just sometimes I've got to go back to the source material on bullet journaling and get back to the nitty-gritty and pare it back to the exact method without all of the creativity and the crazy, because I do both. I have a creative journal personally, and then my work journal is far more just the nitty-gritty functional of the bullet journal method. So I did leave a spot here for the bullet journal method book, and I have a little printout of it. So we are going to go ahead, if I can get this sticky off of here, and stick this in. That's going to be too. All right, there it is. And I'll need to come back and add some thoughts. And this is probably the 3rd time that I've read the bullet journal method. And again, it's just a regrounding of that productivity system for me. I had left pages because I thought that things were going to be a little more up, but still struggling to catch up. So for June, I did do some of that catching up. And what I found out in June for me is that it was a whole lot easier to rebuild that reading habit with staying with something familiar. And so I took June, the beginning of June, to really catch up on Lord of the Rings, and then I surpassed myself. I surpassed my Lord of the Rings reading plan. So I have finished Fellowship, and I have finished The Two Towers. Excuse me. And I'm probably going to hold for a little bit on Return of the King. I did start it, but because I am now a couple of months ahead, I thought I would take some time out to investigate some other things. So I did read Radical Love by Zachary Levi, the author, or the actor, excuse me, this month. I'm also listened to Taliesin by Stephen Lawhead on Audible. It is in the, if you're subscribed to Audible, it's in the free library section. And that is a series that was beloved to me in junior high and high school, and I'm just kind of revisiting it. Again, going back to the things that are familiar to get me back in the habit of the reading. So here, Radical Love by Zachary Levi, and I need to stick this little sticker in and then eventually put in my thoughts. And let me just tell you, I realize he's an actor. This is a memoir. It is a memoir that is focused on mental health, and he is raw and open in this book. I almost didn't buy it because I know he is a person of faith, and I knew there were going to be lots of elements of God that I'm not necessarily still subscribed to in my personal life. But I went ahead and read it. I devoured it pretty quickly on Audible. He does do the Audible version himself. He reads it, which is the way that I prefer to do a memoir, is have the person who wrote it read it to me. And if you struggle with mental health, if you have family members who struggle with mental health, this is a really great book because it is just first person telling of how difficult it is to be a human that struggles with severe mental health issues. So it is just really, really great. For those, if you don't know, I do live with bipolar disorder, and so it was very relevant for me. And then we are ready to set up my spreads for July. I'm a little behind. I haven't gotten these set up yet, so I'm going to go ahead and set these up on camera. I'm going to speed it up for you, and then we'll come back and talk about it. Hey y'all, Editing Beth here. I do realize throughout the course of this video that there are some lighting issues and sometimes it gets very overexposed. So last weekend I actually moved my creative studio, my desk area, my nook, whatever, from one room of my apartment to another one. And I am having some lighting issues. This is the first full video I've done with the new lighting setup, and obviously I'm going to need to tweak those because some things got very, very bright with it all being mostly artificial light. So I'll definitely work on getting those fixed. But what I do for my journal pages is I typically have a scene from a location in Lord of the Rings on the right side of the page. On the left side of the page, I have something lighter and a little more ambient but still relevant, so that I can put a quote on it. And the quote that I have chosen for this particular setup is a conversation between Aragorn and Éowyn, where he says, "What do you fear, lady?" And she says, "A cage." I am setting up the months roughly in the order that the various members of Fellowship land in different areas of Middle-earth, and so this month is Rohan and the Golden Hall of Edoras, because that is where we meet Éowyn for the first time. And then on this page I just put in a calendar, I put in my Lord of the Rings reading tracker, I put in a section for me to just journal some thoughts overall for the month, and then I fill in the gaps with some stickers and ephemera from Lord of the Rings. And there is my July setup for 2022. Like I said, I'm working on Taliesin, a book from my childhood, and then The Dark Archive by Genevieve Cogman, which is part of the Invisible Library series, which is, I love books about books. It's sort of a strange thing. I don't know if it's because my mother's a librarian and I grew up in libraries, but I love books and about bookstores and about libraries and that sort of a thing. So I tend to gravitate towards those, and it's a fun, light series. Again, when you just need some quick reads. So I thought I would, again, go back to the familiar to get myself back in the habit. So here is my July setup. I'll come along and fill in the days that I've read. In fact, I can go ahead and do some of those. That day I was out thrifting. I don't think I did any good reading on that day, but otherwise I've read every day this week except for today. I haven't read anything yet today, so we'll see if I change that and pick up a book after doing this video. So for those of you who are curious possibly about my Lord of the Rings tracker, we are going to jump back here to the back. I do have some things in the back of my journal. But so this is where I have journaled Fellowship because I finished it. So my Lord of the Rings tracker is back here. It's 1,216 pages if you read all 3 novels. And then this is how I separated them out. Fellowship of the Ring was supposed to take me 4 months. Two Towers supposed to take me 4 months. And then Return of the King 4 months. And I would finish in a year, which is a great plan if you've wanted to read Lord of the Rings and you're kind of you find it daunting or you're not sure if you want to get into it. Then you can do that as well. But as you can see, I am caught up through August. So I'm taking a little bit of a break. I'll probably go back to it in August, and I might just finish it early in the year. I'm not sure how that's going to play out. But I have gone ahead and journaled my thoughts on Fellowship of the Ring. Now, I had not read Lord of the Rings since the movies came out, because the movies are so good and they're so close to the original that I just shelved it and hadn't picked it up in a very long time. I have changed a lot in those years, and I have lots of different thoughts. It does not diminish my feelings for Tolkien at all, but man, there are some things that just get on my nerves now and things that I can understand. Like, I totally understand why Tom Bombadil was left out of the movies. For those of you who know Lord of the Rings really, really well, like, that whole sequence doesn't further the story at all, and it would have just bogged down those already very long movies by a lot. Sorry for the noise there. My personal Faramir from Lord of the Rings just jumped on the desk. He didn't make it into camera. But the Dots and Beyond felines, for those of you who may not know, are named after Lord of the Rings. So I do have an Éowyn and I have a Faramir. So Two Towers, I finished it, but I've not yet put my thoughts in. And this is where I will put in my thoughts for Return of the King. And then here at the back of the journal, I have my table for my best books to kind of figure out what my favorite of the year was going to be. I may not read enough to actually use this. We'll see how that goes. This is a stencil I use a lot. And then here are my DNFs. And the one book so far that I have DNF'd, I came into 2022 reading Shadow of the Wind, and I came close to the end, and at that point I wasn't even sure what was happening anymore. I just didn't connect to that book at all, and it is very rare that I completely DNF something. So there is the current update on my reading journal. I'll try to do another one quarterly, so somewhere around the end of September, beginning of October, to see if I am reading more now that I am not so buried in work. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.